What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to The Haunted Beard. Once again, my name is Jake. Thank you for joining me today. Well, I've got some more Halloween content here for you. With the release of Halloween Ends, I figured it would be appropriate for me to do an updated ranking video. By the way, I've released a fairly lengthy video on my Halloween Ends review with spoilers and everything. Be sure to check that out if you haven't yet. Also, just a few months ago, I reviewed this entire franchise. So if you want some more in-depth thoughts, be sure to check out my Halloween reviews playlist. I will leave the link in the description. But without further ado, here's my updated, latest, with all 13 movies, Halloween ranking. Let's do it. Like with any list, this is just my opinion, and my criteria for ranking these is pretty simple. It's just which one would I least want to rewatch all the way up to which one would I absolutely want to rewatch right now, sort of thing. So, without further ado, here we go, kicking things off at number 13. And still, for me, the worst of the worst, the bottom of the barrel, is Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. This thing, to me, was just pretty atrocious. There are very, very few, if any, redeeming qualities to this. I understand that there is a whole lot of issues with production, and there's different cuts and things like that, but as it sits, really the whole thing with capping off the Thorn trilogy and all that stuff is just awful. That whole exposition scene in this movie with Paul Rudd explaining and giving all the backstory in the history on the Thorn cult and everything is just like, I mean, what are we doing? We're just we have run out of ideas. It's just terrible. His performance in this is not great either. And really, if I could kind of summarize all my thoughts, it would really come down to the ending of this movie, because I think the ending is just horrendous. When you've got Paul Rudd putting down some magic rocks on the floor, Michael Myers coming after him, grabs him by the neck, and then Paul Rudd says a magic word, and that stops it, that just really pisses me off. I think the ending is just awful. So, yeah, this would definitely be the last thing if I had to rewatch. This would be the last one on the list. So that's number 13. Coming in at number 12, and I will say there is not really much difference between these two movies, just like a very, very small amount. But coming in at number 12 for me is Halloween Resurrection. And this thing really sucks because of what they did in the beginning with killing Laurie Strode, bad decision, and then you totally undo all the greatness that is Halloween H2O and that whole ending, which is just a horrible decision. And this movie is like the epitome of just a cash grab. It's just like, clearly they've run out of ideas, but they just want to use the Halloween name and Michael Myers to just make more money. The dialogue is terrible. The characters are terrible. The acting is not great by any means. You've got Tyra Banks dancing around to some hip-hop song. It's just like, what are we doing? Just all sorts of bad decisions. The only reason why this one just barely edges out Halloween 6 is because there are a couple lines from Busta Rhymes, as bad as he is, and as many complaints as I could make about him, there are a couple lines of his that actually got a little bit of a chuckle out of me. And more so, not like an actual genuine laugh, but more so of like, I can't believe how truly awful this is. It's so bad, it's mildly entertaining, I guess. It's so bad it's good in a way, kind of thing. So that's really it. Look, I mean, enough has been said about him karate kicking Michael Myers, and yeah, it's just atrocious. And the ending too, let's kill Michael Myers by electrocuting his junk. Yeah, what a great idea. Like, how does that make it into the final edit of this movie? It's all around just terrible. Up next at number 11, and I guess this would be a good point to warn you, I'm going to have a couple controversial or unpopular opinions here, but I got to be honest. So number 11 for me is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. And I know that this ranks higher on probably the vast majority of people's lists, but for me, and I actually rewatched this too. I just rewatched it again the other day because I just wanted to see if I was still feeling similar about it or if my thoughts had changed. And really, for me, just the vast majority of this just kind of, just falls flat. There's not really a whole lot about it that really kind of just hits me. Um, there are a couple moments that I like about it. I like Jamie Lloyd for the most part. I think she's pretty good. I like the scene towards the end when they're all barricaded in the house, and what's her name, Kelly, comes down and lights the candle, and she sees the cop's face there, and Myers is sitting in the chair. Pretty cool little scene. There's a couple spots that are pretty good, but the vast majority of this thing, it just feels flat, and it does feel dated to a degree in some spots, and also too, I feel like the kills in this just left a lot to be desired. They just felt very tame, and it's like they cut away right as it was getting good. Like it didn't give us the blood and the gore and the gruesomeness that you would hope for. And um, yeah, the kills just don't really work for me. Also, too, I mean, the mask is terrible, but we kind of all know that. That's not really saying anything new. So, yeah, it just felt like the kills are really disappointing. And this is an interesting one, right? Because with Halloween 4, they kind of got things back on track, right? You kind of had the diversion with Halloween 3. And in the first two Halloween films, this one really just kind of has a complete sort of atmosphere and vibe shift from the first two, because the first two are more focused on kind of the suspense and the atmosphere and the creepiness of Michael Myers, where this one is more about just kind of rushing to the kills. And it doesn't really savor any of that suspense, at least for me anyway. And so it definitely feels like we're headed in a different direction with the Halloween movies with this film. And so yeah, just the vast majority of this is just I'm just kind of like, it's meh. I don't really feel too high or too low about it. It's just kind of unmemorable in a lot of ways for me. So I know controversial opinion, but that's just the way I feel. So that's my number 11. Let's get into number 10. And number 10 for me is Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And Season of the Witch, in a way, almost has the exact opposite problem of Halloween 4. And I will say that the vast majority of this, I just kind of didn't really find all that interesting or compelling. I appreciate that. I liked Carpenter's original vision to kind of go with a different story set on Halloween night. It could have been interesting, and they tried to do that here. I appreciate them trying to do something different, but the story we got, I just don't really find that interesting or compelling. The main character, played by Tom Atkins, which I know there's some big Tom Atkins fans out there, I just do not like it at all. He is kind of a perv and is really just kind of a terrible person. He's a terrible father and like ditches his kid at the beginning of this movie to go hook up with this young chick. It's just like, ugh. However, though, it has the opposite problem of Halloween 4 because this has some pretty solid kills in it. The one chick gets her whole face rearranged, basically, is cool. And then the one where they actually kill the kid watching the TV with the pumpkin hat on and everything. So it does have some memorable kills, and it does have a pretty legit score as well. So at least there are some more high points in this one, I guess, for me. So that is where Halloween 3 Season of the Witch sits for right now. Okay, next up at number 9, I have Halloween Kills. And this one is one where the opening half hour is like pretty great and pretty legit. And I remember watching it and being like, man, this is pretty good. You got just that fantastic sequence with Michael coming out of the burning house and killing all the firefighters. I mean, I think that's a highlight of this entire franchise. It's a great scene. You got the other scene where he goes into like I think the nursing home or whatever. It opens up with two really solid kills. And again, I do like that this one has plenty of kills. But where this one just kind of fell off with me is just the stupid decision making by the vast majority of the characters. The whole mob mentality aspect I just did not really get behind. That it really kind of gets you as an audience member, at least for me anyway, to completely like turn my back on Haddonfield. And it's like, well, skip you guys. I don't even like you anymore. And it's like, and you're supposed to be the victims, right? It's like we're supposed to sympathize with you, but then everybody's just a complete idiot. And it's kind of hard to sympathize. And then just people are making stupid decisions, and it just slowly loses believability. The whole "evil dies tonight" chant got old. And just, they kill the poor mental patient guy because he jumps out of the window, right? And it just, again, the mob mentality thing just did not really work for me all that well. horrible decision making, especially the dad later on in the movie goes into the house, and it's just like, guy, like, come on, man, call for somebody. You got your son and your son's girlfriend in the car with you, and you're going to go into the house where Michael Myers is without any backup. It's just like, man, it was a bummer because I felt like it started off so good and then just kind of slowly and just crashed by the end of it. It was a long, slow descent into just rough times. So that's where Halloween Kills is. Next up at number 8 is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And I know this is probably way too high on this list for a lot of you, but hear me out. I'm going to make my case. And remember, it's just my opinion. It's all good. But I did rewatch this one as well because I had to find out if I just had expectations when I first watched this thing that it was going to be just an absolute dumpster fire, because that's all I heard about it. And so maybe my expectations were that it was going to be so terrible, and then I watched it and I was like, huh, wasn't that bad. Well, I watched it again last night, in fact, and it's not by any means great. It's not even really good, but there are still some elements of it that I think actually work pretty well that I enjoy. And I understand all the complaints, and by and large, I agree with them. But there's a couple things about this that work for me why I put it above some of the others, namely Halloween 4. I like that they got back to kind of more of the, I think, suspense building in terms of Michael. There's more of that kind of stalker type feel where he's walking around and lurking, and he's kind of in the shadows and behind the scenes and behind people that I feel like the series got away from in Halloween 4. And so I kind of liked that. There's just some better suspense there. And I also, say what you will, I think the kills in this are better than Halloween 4. Absolutely. I like the kill of, what's his name, Mikey, the boyfriend with the hot rod. He gets like the pitchfork thing to the face is great. I also like the kill too with when the two people go off into the barn to fool around, and Michael is in the barn and sticks the dude with the pitchfork and then cuts the chick's head off with the scythe or whatever. But I just like that. I like the setup. He's kind of more in the shadows, lurking. There's kind of more suspense and stuff like that. And so I think the kills are better here too. And I like Jamie Lloyd. Obviously, yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity and just a terrible decision for them not to continue the sort of the trajectory that Halloween 4 ended on. Which, by the way, as much as I kind of trash in Halloween 4, I will say the ending to that is pretty great. And I really wish that they would have just gone in that direction with Halloween 5. But it's like they almost kind of just, retcon that. And like, we're not really going to make her the killer. She's now possessed by Michael. Yeah, that sucks. It really would have been interesting to see her go full dark and almost be like Michael's, I don't know, protege or something. Anything different than what they did. Loomis in this is not great. He's kind of becoming unhinged and borderline abusive. And yeah, I still don't think Tina is terrible as everybody. She's definitely annoying. I don't think she deserves maybe quite as much hate as she usually gets. They did do Rachel dirty in this, by killing her off early. It is a bummer. So I get the complaints. There is still an aspect of this too for me that like the comedy in here is clearly terrible, but it's almost funny because of how bad it is, and so. With a movie like Halloween 4 where it just falls flat for me, at least this has like something that is at least more entertaining. And so to me, it's like this definitely has the lower lows, but it has higher highs as well. And so it's kind of more of a roller coaster than just more of a flat line sort of thing. And so, I get the complaints, but that's where Halloween 5 sits for me. So let's keep on going. Next up at number 7, we have got the latest Halloween Ends. And this one is more or less right in the middle of the pack. And as I said, I did a full, like a 25-minute spoiler video on this. So if you want more in-depth thoughts, be sure to check that out. But this is a weird one because it is such a curveball in terms of the story, right? And this is one that, like, I didn't actively hate or was mad at while I was watching. I was just kind of more shaking my head in sort of disbelief and bewilderment. Like, I just could not believe that this is what they decided to do with this story. And so my main point in my spoiler review for this movie was that, like, I like the character of Corey. I like his character. I think the guy's performance is good, and I like what they do with that story, just devoid of the Halloween world. It's an interesting story about his character and the arc that he goes on and the journey that he goes on. But it just doesn't really belong in the Halloween world, in my opinion. And so it's just such a curveball out of left field, and you're just like, why is this even in here? And so, yeah, it's a baffling decision. It's just so wild that they did this, and they're just, there needs to be more Michael and Laurie. If you're going to conclude, this is the concluding chapter, and they're just like, on the back burner more or less until like the last 15 minutes. It's just like, what in the world are we doing? So it's a crazy one. I've never really seen anything quite like it before, but yeah, those are my thoughts. Like I said, check out my full-length spoiler review if you want some more thoughts, but that comes in at number 7. Next up at number 6 is Rob Zombie's Halloween, and I think I'm pretty much in the majority on this when I say that the first third of this movie doesn't need to be here and is pretty terrible and doesn't belong. And if I was going to rewatch this, I would almost start like, 30 to 40 minutes into this movie. I don't want to know Michael Myers' backstory. I don't want to see him as a kid, because that, seeing him get bullied and all the crap he dealt with, that just makes me sympathize with him and feel bad for him. And it's like, I don't need to feel bad for Michael Myers. I don't need all this information. You've got a lot of just nasty, gross dialogue from Rob Zombie, especially more in that opening third. It's just not a very pleasant watch. However, once all that happens and you can kind of get through the junk, the last, hour, 70 minutes, probably something like that, is pretty good and enjoyable. You kind of get a more like a condensed version of the original Halloween movie, right? And obviously there's some differences and things like that, but you get kind of a nice little, quick 70-minute cut of Halloween Rob Zombie style, and there's some definite fun to be had here with that. So I like just kind of his more, brutality and stuff like that. I like just the intensity of it. I think Scout Taylor Compton does pretty good as Laurie Strode. I really like that you get a real sort of prolonged savor the moment type thing when you get her showdown with Michael Myers at the end and all that stuff. And so if we can just cut the first third, the rest of this thing is a pretty good time. So Rob Zombie's Halloween sits at number 6. Next up at number 5 is Halloween 2018. And overall, had a pretty good time with this one. There's a lot to appreciate here. I like the first chapter of this new trilogy the best. And the main thing about this that I don't like is just the comedy and the attempts at humor. It just, none of it lands, and it even makes it worse because it completely just destroys the tone of this thing. And this is supposed to be an intense, scary horror film with Michael Myers, and you're in here making... I come back to the conversation between the two cops talking about some sort of sandwich he ate, and it's just like, guys, like, what are we doing here? This is not the time to do Quentin Tarantino Pulp Fiction type dialogue. It's like, I don't know what this is. Anyways, the comedy in this is just terrible. Other than that, though, with the exception of the Dr. Sartain thing and that whole thing, I just didn't really like. Other than those two main things, there's quite a bit here to appreciate, and I think works pretty good. I really like the opening gas station kill when you kind of fully get the kind of impact of, oh man, Michael Myers is back, he's here. Got the slow-mo shot of him putting on the mask, right? And it's just like, yeah, good stuff there. There's also some really solid camera work here. Obviously, there's that great extended tracking scene with Michael Myers on Halloween that ends with him killing the woman in her house. Really solid sequence there. And then the finale is you get a really legit showdown between him and Laurie Strode. that I think is probably like my second favorite showdown climax, maybe in this whole entire franchise. And so there's a lot to appreciate here. Overall, have a pretty good, pretty fun time with Halloween 2018. Coming in at number 4 is Halloween 2 from 1981. And like what most people say, this one does pair quite well with that original. I like that it just picks up immediately where the original Halloween ends, and it just tells one kind of nice overall story with two movies. And so I like that aspect. And I think my appreciation for this one too has elevated a little bit after recently watching all the majority of these for the first time. But this one, in terms of just kind of its feel and atmosphere, I think really feels the most like the original Halloween, and they went more with just the suspense building and the atmosphere and just the ever-present evil of Michael Myers and just him kind of lurking in the shadows and in the background. And I like that vibe. I think that sort of vibe fits the Halloween template, I think, better than just the straight up like maniacal slasher killer type thing. And so I like that they did more of that here. I like that it feels more like the original, and got some solid kills here with the hot tub kill is pretty great, and I like the fiery showdown. A little bit of a negative with I just wish we got a little bit more Laurie Strode. You know, she's kind of out of commission throughout the majority of this thing. I like the hospital setting. There's kind of a cool chase sequence though within the hospital with her and Myers that I like as well. So Halloween 2 pairs really nicely with the original, and I think it makes for a great trilogy in this if you watch Halloween, Halloween 2, and then H2O. So those are my thoughts on Halloween 2. It comes in at number 4. All right, here we are, top 3 time, and if I haven't outraged you yet, I'm sure this will, as I'm sure you've probably been waiting. Where is Rob Zombies 2? Where is Rob Zombies 2? Well, it comes in at number 3 for me. And I know it's outrageous, but man, this movie for me, it was just kind of unbelievable. So I understand all the complaints with it, and there are definitely things about this movie that I would say are not good. But the thing that I liked about it is I feel like the studio really just let Rob Zombie loose with his vision, and like he really just got to make the movie he wanted to make. And what I think is cool about this is that this kind of really stands out as its own unique thing. With a franchise now with 13 movies, you know, it's easy for a lot of movies to kind of just get jumbled together, and it's like they kind of just, you know, there's you kind of lose some of that distinctive quality in some of them. But like this is one that in one of 13 chapters basically, it has its own individual unique identity, that he was able to create something so stand out for me amongst all these other movies. And there's just something about this movie that's it's just interesting to me. And even in the ways that it's bad, I just can't help but kind of admire and respect Zombie for like swinging for the fences and just for taking crazy ridiculous risks, for better or for worse. Specific things that I like about this, again, I really like just his visual presentation. I like just the absolute brutality of the kills in this. Man, the Octavia Spencer kill is horrifying. But man, I mean, he just brings it. This is Michael Myers. I mean, just as evil and sadistic as we have ever seen him. I think this is the most gruesome and bloody and disturbing movie out of all 13 of these. So it definitely delivers in that category. I really like, I know Scout Taylor Compton gets a little bit of hate for her character and performance. I kind of like the bold choice there and just really kind of dealing with her severe emotional trauma and just how damaged she is. I also I like Danielle Harrison here. And I mentioned before in my previous ranking in my Rob Zombie 2 review, I think the sequence where she gets attacked by Myers and then Laurie Strode finds her is just, I think it's a fantastic scene. I think it's awesome. One of the best scenes in this whole franchise. I think it's just fantastic. So even the crazy stuff with the white horse, it's just kind of mind blowing to me that Rob Zombie's doing like visual metaphors and motifs in a slasher movie. And, you know, I understand the criticism about it. It doesn't fully work, but still, I just kind of like that he's swinging for the fences. And this is one of those things where, like, I talked about Halloween Ends, that it's such a curveball, like it doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. And this is a movie too that is kind of a curveball, that it feels so different, but it still kind of lands well and fits well within the Halloween world. And so I really like that about it. I just like how different it is. I like the risks. I like the boldness. Um, I just appreciate Rob Zombie just saying, I'm going to make this movie and I'm going to do what I want to do, for better or for worse. So there it is at number 3, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Which brings us to number 2, and that for me is Halloween H2O. Man, this is just a good, fun time. I like the 90s slasher vibes. I like that there's a little kind of flavor of Scream in there. A lot of fun. I like what they do with Laurie Strode here. I think this is perhaps Jamie Lee Curtis at her absolute best performance in any of the movies that she is in this series. I think she's really solid here. And watching it for the first time just a few months ago, I wasn't really expecting any of kind of the emotional and dramatic weight they gave her. But man, they really give a lot of kind of meat and something to sink into with her character. I think she does awesome. Just the conflict with her son, the drama with just the internal conflict and everything. She's great. I think she is maybe the biggest highlight of this whole movie. And then they give us what I think is the best climax and showdown in this entire franchise. And I was on board before that. I was having a good time, but then the last 20 minutes, man, really just seals the deal. When Laurie Strode gets out of that car, grabs that axe, marches back into the school yelling out, "Michael!" Man, I was just on board. I was into it. I was having a good old time. And then you just get a great showdown between Laurie and Michael, my favorite one of the whole series. So this movie really kind of hits it out of the park in terms of its ending. And so that's why Halloween H2O sits at number 2. Finally, number 1, of course, it's the original John Carpenter's Halloween from 1978. I mean, and it can't really be anything else, right? But this film is, I think it is objectively, if I can be objective, I think it is the best film out of this, and it's also my personal favorite. It's fantastic. One of the things I said in my previous ranking video was that my appreciation for this thing has gone up quite a few notches after having watched this entire series now. And one of the things that has done that is you can just see everybody else's effort and how it just kind of pales in comparison to Carpenter's. Some of them come closer, some of them are way far away. And sometimes it helps you see how, it helps you appreciate how good something is when you can see how bad things are, and it helps you figure out what exactly about this is so great. And I just love what he does. I mean, I could go on and on about this for a while, but I just love what he does with the atmosphere, and he squeezes every last drop of suspense out of this, and that's what I love. And I love the atmosphere, the vibe. Some of the shots are just so iconic. Obviously, the score is iconic. And he builds suspense and tension unlike anything. Certainly unlike any of the other 12 movies in this franchise. It's just fantastic. And truly think this is a great film. One of my favorite horror, one of my favorite slashers of all time. So, of course, John Carpenter's Halloween sits at the top of my Halloween ranking. Well, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. If you like content like this, that's what I do on The Haunted Beard. Horror and thriller movie content coming at you. Hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it, and I will see you next time on The Haunted Beard.